In my mind, I'm going to Carolina. Can't you see the sunshine? Can't you just feel the moonshine? Ain't it just like a friend of mine to hit me from behind? Yes, I'm going to Carolina in my mind. Karen, she's the silver sun. You best walk away and watch it shine. Watch her watch the morning come. A silver tear appearing, now I'm crying. Ain't I going to Carolina in my mind? There ain't no doubt in no one's mind that love's the finest thing around. Whisper something soft and kind. Hey babe, the sky's on fire and I'm dying. Ain't I going to Carolina in my mind? In my mind, I'm going to Carolina. Can't you see the sunshine? Can't you just feel the moonshine? Ain't it just like a friend of mine to hit me from behind? Yes,
Hello, everyone. This is Terry Smith. Welcome to the show, One Too Many, No Dupes, on this Independence Day, 245 years after its founding in 1776. Hope you had a good holiday today, or might be celebrating it tomorrow, but a lot of us have the day off tomorrow, and so. But this is the 4th, so happy July 4th to everyone out there. This show, just to review again, is a show of speeches, patriotic speeches from history or from works, historical works that are significant, that it's good to remember as American citizens when you have a responsibility, not only have rights, but responsibility to know your history and to be able to appreciate it so that we can stand up for it when we need to. Now, I've memorized a number of these, well, all these things you'll be hearing tonight. The main works are memorized. Something I like to do as an actor, to memorize the speeches, get into the character of Thomas Jefferson and the Declaration, Patrick Henry, even Lou Gehrig. It's when you get into that speech and get into every word, you can get a sense of what it was like at the time and how it applies to today. So the One Too Many, No Dupes, one person through the historical speech speaks to many people, one to many. That one person is influenced, of course, by many people, so it goes both ways, one to many, many to one. And there's no dupes, no duplicates. The speakers are not duplicated, and neither are the people in the audience. All of us are unique, so there are no dupes. We don't have to worry about de-duping anything. And the other thing is, the people who are speaking are not duped into saying what we're doing, and they're not trying to dupe the listener into going their way. They're normally saying what they believe because that's what they firmly believe, and that's the way they live their lives. And also, so I'll give the speech. I'll give a little introduction to each speech, and then give the speech, and then to transition from one to the next, I play some music, either recorded that I've done at home, singing, such as I just did on that James Taylor Carolina song, which I like, but I thought it was a little bit of Americana. Speaking of one couple of our states, North and South Carolina, I believe they were just one colony originally, but maybe not. And so there's also a number of Americana songs out there, among them Country Roads, West Virginia, and California, of course, and Chicago, New York, which we'll end up the show with. And so my website is actingbuff.com. I've started to update that more, so if you want to keep track of things I've been doing or things I will be doing, it's theater buff was taken, so actingbuff.com is my website. You can reach me through that website. And a couple of things I've done recently and will be doing in the near future I wanted to mention here. Last week I did a entertainment gig playing piano and singing and giving parts of these speeches to a assisted living facility in Bay Village. So I kind of got a little rehearsal in there for today's show. They, of course, all liked it. There was one Marine there that kept saying, "Hoorah, hoorah." So they liked the different pieces I picked out for them and the songs, some by Perry Como and Dean Martin. So I enjoyed doing that. Tomorrow I will be giving the Declaration of Independence from memory at a event that Tom Hack is running. What's actually at his house in Lake County. The name of the event is, you can look it up or Google it, Lake County Liberty Coalition, and that's out in Concord. So I'll be looking forward to that. The picnic runs from 1 to 4. Everyone is invited. Just RSVP to Tom, if you would, before heading out there. And also I want to mention on July 22nd coming up, the American Nationalities Movement. The president is Ralph Perk Jr., Rocky Perk. He's the president of that organization, the Captive Nations Dinner, which they've started up. They weren't able to do any last year, of course, because of COVID, but we're starting up again. So look forward to going to that dinner. The honorees on the 22nd of July, Thursday, is 2 honorees, I believe. Edward Crawford, who was the American ambassador to Ireland, so I'm sure he's got a interesting speech to give there, as well as the Justice Kennedy for the Ohio Supreme Court Justice. She'll be there speaking as well. I also was able to give the Declaration delivery to the Westlake 912 group in Westlake. They meet 2 times a month, Saturday mornings, from 10 to 12. Jeffrey Rapp heads that organization up. So anybody needs more information on that, you can contact me through actingbuff.com. And I also was able to give the Rifleman's Creed speech to a group down in Medina, headed up by Lisa Woods, McFan Group, Medina County Friends and Neighbors Organization. So she has an event coming up on July 10th, I believe. So keep those in mind. Now, all right, so let's just start off the 4th of July with something we're all familiar with, but the Pledge of Allegiance, which was written, I believe, around 1890. It might have been before that. It was changed around that time. It was originally a few words had changed. It used to be "My Flag," and so now it's a little bit different. In 1954, under President Eisenhower's watch, they added the "Under God" clause. So let's just all think about that. I usually, when we do the pledge, I concentrate on one star on the flag, and it helps me concentrate instead of my eyes moving all about. So I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty, justice for all. All right, let the fireworks begin. Now, even there, the question is, there's the grammar, there's no comma, one nation under God. We're all used to pausing, one nation under God, indivisible, but it's technically it should read one nation under God, indivisible. So I don't think there's any difference in meaning if you include or don't include the comma. Somebody said there's something about restrictive, but I don't know what that means, but other people say there's no difference in the meaning. But if you want to say it technically correct, you don't pause, because there is technically no comma there. So it's always something to be looking out for. Now, as we move on to approach the Declaration of Independence, I think it's worth noting the importance of Patrick Henry's speech in a year before the signing and writing of the Declaration. In March of 1775, the Second Virginia Convention was underway. Patrick Henry was in attendance along with his countrymen and fellow Virginians, George Washington and Thomas Jefferson. Benjamin Harrison was there. The president of the convention was Peyton Randolph. It's not president of a country because we don't have a country yet. So he was also president over the first Virginia Convention, Peyton Randolph. So, but it was Patrick Henry who was among those who were in support of Virginian troops for a Revolutionary War, which they believed was imminent. Patrick Henry was recognized by Peyton Randolph to speak against British tyranny and in support of a resolution that he submitted to the convention, and gave this famous speech. I will give a abbreviated version of it just to give a taste so we can know what we're going into before we do the declaration. Patrick Henry rises from the third pew, his seat in the third pew of seating at St. John's Anglican Church, approaches the front of the assembly and begins. Mr. President, no man thinks more highly than I do of the patriotism as well as the abilities of the very worthy gentlemen who have just addressed the House. But different men often see the same subject in different lights, and therefore I hope it will not be thought disrespectful to those gentlemen if, entertaining as I do, opinions of a character very opposite to theirs, I shall speak forth my sentiments freely and without reserve. This is no time for ceremony. The question before the House is one of awful moment to this country. For my own part, I consider it as nothing less than the question of freedom or slavery, and in proportion to the magnitude of the subject, ought to be the freedom of the debate. It is only in this way that we can hope to arrive at truth and fulfill the great responsibility which we hold to God and our country. Should I keep back my opinions at such a time, through fear of giving offense, I should consider myself as guilty of treason towards my country and of an act of disloyalty toward the majesty of heaven. If we wish to be free, if we mean to preserve inviolate those inestimable privileges for which we have been so long contending, if we mean not basely to abandon the noble struggle in which we have been so long engaged, and which we have pledged ourselves never to abandon until the glorious object of our contest shall be obtained, we must fight. I repeat it, sir, we must fight. An appeal to arms and to the God of hosts is all that is left us. It is in vain, sir, to extenuate the matter. Gentlemen may cry peace, peace, but there is no peace. The war is actually begun. The next gale that sweeps from the north will bring to our ears the clash of resounding arms. Our brethren are already in the field. Why stand we here idle? What is it that gentlemen wish? What would they have? Is life so dear, or peace so sweet, as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God. I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty, or give me death.
You got a lot of nerve to say you are my friend. When I was down, you just stood there grinning. You got a lot of nerve to say you got a helping hand to lend. You just want to be on the side that's winning. You know it's not like that. If you're so hurt, why then don't you show it? You say you lost your faith, but that's not where it's at. You have no faith to lose, and you know it. I know the reason that you talk behind my back. I used to be among the crowd you're in with. Do you take me for such a fool to think I'd make contact with the one who tries to hide what he don't know to begin with?
Okay, a little fun there with Bob Dylan. I used to be among the crowd you're in with. So the Patriots used to be among those Brits. But things change when you have a reason, when you believe in something enough to change it. Which after Patrick Henry's famous speech in '75, war broke out at Lexington and Concord, Massachusetts. 1 month later, in April of '75, continued on through '75 into '76. By that time, over 80 cities had declared their own independence from British rule. And the foreign allies, the French and Spanish allies, they requested that the colonies make a formal declaration of independence because they didn't want to just support 2 colonies or 3. They wanted to know that if they were going to support us, everyone's got some skin in the game. Now, the Declaration is an aspirational document. People say it was created by privileged white men, 5 of which who were assassinated, executed under George III's rules after he learned of the Declaration. He said every one of those signers was to be executed. 5 of them were caught and executed. 10 fought and died in the battle. Many of the families of those who signed the Declaration lost their properties, their homes burned up, and a lot of atrocities. You can look that up yourself. So there's not a lot of privilege going on there. So and even Thomas Jefferson saw the end of slavery coming, and Charlie Kirk has a good video on this, talking about slavery and the process where the Declaration began. This process of a couple hundred years of aspirations. It wasn't everything wasn't set in stone. Wasn't intended to be said that everything was cool, but they were aspiring to get there. Jefferson included a clause, denouncing the practice of slavery as practiced by King George III, but was persuaded to remove that clause in the final declaration so that the southern colonies would sign on to it. With that clause in there, we wouldn't even get the Declaration going. So delegates met, 13 colonies in Philadelphia. Primary author was Thomas Jefferson, age of 33 years old. I think back what I was doing at age 33, and to think that, he wrote most of this at that time and was willing to give his life, fortunes, and sacred honor for it at that time. Now, the one thing to keep in mind during the Declaration, there's a word denounce. We denounce the separation. Denounce today means to put down, of course, but the meaning at that time, the way it was used, it was, understood at that time to have a different meaning. It was to officially proclaim. So we officially proclaim our separation. One more note, Washington and Hamilton, they did not sign the Declaration. They were off in June fighting the war in New York, which they lost, that battle, but they subsequently turned things around. So they did not sign, but on July 2nd, the Declaration was finished. The final copy was dated July 4th, 1776. Copies were made and sent to the different colonies on horseback, about 200 copies. There's about 3 or 4 of the copies remain. One of them is in the National Archives, the original. So let's listen in as Thomas Jefferson reviews the final draft of the Declaration of Independence. In Congress, July 4, 1776, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. When, in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles, and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has imposed taxes on us without our consent. He has taken away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. Oppression after oppression. We hereby submit more than a score of additional grievances to be included within the text of this declaration. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny, totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our emigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They, too, have been deaf to the voice of justice and of consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation, and hold them, as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace, friends. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress assembled, appealing to the supreme judges of the world for the rectitude of our intentions due in the name and by authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Welcome back, everybody. So that was the Declaration of Independence, which was, as I say, distributed amongst the colonies by horseback and read probably like by a town crier type person. Not so much, I'd think, because people were illiterate that they couldn't read. I think they could read almost better than a lot of people today. But since they only had printing facilities, to do by hand, they just made up, a couple hundred of them to send those out. And so it was intended, I believe, to be read aloud. So as we move on into the 20th century, I'd like to do a piece here. I looked for a piece that was anti-socialist, and I found one by Herbert Hoover, who was running for president in 1928. Then he references in this speech a war, but it wasn't, World War II, and you couldn't say World War I at the time because they didn't know there was a II coming, which that didn't start till, for America, 1941. So the war that's referenced is the World War I. The war was known at the time the war to end all wars, but that didn't happen. But he does mention, he does speak against socialism in the speech, and not just, he's had experienced it. So this was done in 1928, which is 150 years after the start of our nation in 1776, approximately 150 years. And that's what the number of references that he references in his speech. Herbert Hoover was not known to be a very great president. Quite the contrary, I think, by most people. Even he was Republican, but he's not even considered that good among Republicans, as far as I know. And it was easy for Roosevelt, FDR, to beat him in the next election, and FDR was president for another 3 terms, actually elected to a 4th, and after that they changed the number of years you could be president. But FDR, a lot of people like him, but some people say he extended the depression that Hoover began, that FDR extended another 10 years instead of getting it over more quickly. So, but the concept here is what Hoover believed and saw in the United States form of government in relation to socialism. So it begins like this. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Herbert Hoover, and I'm running for president in this election of 1928. I intend to discuss some of those more fundamental principles upon which I believe the government of the United States should be conducted. During 150 years, we have built up a form of self-government and a social system which is peculiarly our own. It differs essentially from all others in the world. It is the American system. It is founded on the conception that only through ordered liberty, freedom, and equal opportunity to the individual will his initiative and enterprise spur on the march of progress. And in our insistence on equality of opportunity has our system advanced beyond the whole world. During the Great World War, with the United States involvement beginning in 1917, we necessarily turned to the government for the preservation of the nation. The government took over the business of citizens. We regimented our whole people temporarily into a socialistic state. However justified in wartime, if continued in peacetime, it would destroy not only our American system, but with it, our progress and freedom as well. The effect that an interference of government in business would have on our form of system of self-government would reach to the daily life of every man and woman. Every step of bureaucratizing the business of our country poisons the very roots of political equality, free speech, free assembly, free press, and equality of opportunity. It is not the road to more liberty, but to less liberty. An expansion of the government's role in the business world would cramp and cripple the mental and spiritual energies of our people. It would extinguish equality and opportunity. It would dry up the spirit of liberty and progress. I have witnessed, not only at home but abroad, the many failures of government in business. I have seen its tyrannies, its injustices, its destructions of self-government. I have witnessed the lack of advance, the lowered standards of living, the depressed spirits of people working under such a system. And what has been the result of the American system? Our country has become the land of opportunity to those born without inheritance. Russia has natural resources equal to ours. Her people are as industrious as ours, but she has not had the blessings of our form of government. By adhering to our principles, our America has come nearer to the abolition of poverty, to the abolition of fear of want, than humanity has ever reached before. The departure from the American system will jeopardize the very liberty and freedom of our people. It will destroy equality of opportunity, not only to ourselves, but to our children and grandchildren. Thank you very much. Okay, that was the, oh, I missed a part in there. That was the, I'll just throw this in there. There was a part that says, when the war closed, we were challenged with a choice between the American system of rugged individualism and a European philosophy of diametrically opposed doctrines of paternalism and state socialism. Resolutely turning our face away from these war practices, we went at once back to the fundamental conception of the rights and responsibility of the individual. We thereby restored the government to a position of umpire instead of a player in the economic game. So that's an important thing to get in there, because the name of that speech, it's known, he's the one that coined the term rugged individualism, Herbert Hoover. Let's move on, ladies and gentlemen, to World War II, as we think about our freedom here today, which began in 1776 on July 4th, and people that have fought and died for it through the years. After the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941, Brigadier General William H. Rupertus, who served in World War I and was in World War II, he was asked to put together a document to impress upon Marines the importance to improve their marksmanship and to respect their weapon. I was privileged to give this speech down at the McFan Group with Lisa Woods heading up when a National Rifle Association trustee was the main speaker there. And I'd like to share that with you. I think, the fear of going into war is, it's one thing to fear that, as Patton says, anyone that says he's not afraid in battle is lying. But the other thing is about being in battle is not, together with being afraid of getting killed is the discomfort with killing someone else. So, most kids get into the Army. Hopefully they believe in something so strongly, and there's a good enough reason to fight that they know that, either you're going to have to kill them or be killed. So the choice is a little bit different there, but it's a shock to have to kill someone. Unfortunately, that's the way war is. But the Rifleman's Creed, it kind of has an element of that in there too, recognizing the difficulty of getting even over that step. So at least that's what I read into it. Rifleman's Creed by William H. Rupertus used to be required by Marine recruits to memorize. It's no longer required, but it's a number of people that go into Marines still memorize it. And it goes like this. The Rifleman's Creed. This is my rifle. There are many like it, but this one is mine. My rifle is my best friend. It is my life. I must master it as I must master my life. My rifle without me is useless. Without my rifle, I am useless. I must fire my rifle true. I must shoot straighter than my enemy who is trying to kill me. I must shoot him before he shoots me. I will. My rifle and myself know that what counts in this war is not the rounds we fire, the noise of our burst, nor the smoke we make. We know that it is the hits that count. We will hit. My rifle is human, even as I, because it is my life. Thus I will learn it as a brother. I will learn its weaknesses, its strength, its parts, its accessories, its sights, and its barrel. I will ever guard it against the ravages of weather and damage, as I will ever guard my legs, my arms, my eyes, and my heart against damage. I will keep my rifle clean and ready. We will become part of each other. We will. Before God, I swear this creed. My rifle and myself are the defenders of my country. We are the masters of our enemy. We are the saviors of my life. So be it, until victory is America's, and there is no enemy but peace. Okay, that was the Rifleman's Creed. As we move on to acknowledge not only the soldiers in the Army, Navy, Marines, National Guard, Coast Guard, who fight against primarily foreign enemies, we also should be thankful on the 4th of July for those who keep the peace within our own country, the policemen. And, America, the freedom that we experience in America is not freedom to do anything we want. As Herbert Hoover says, ordered liberty. So it's liberty to an extent of the people making laws. We don't have so much liberty or freedom that we can go against laws. So unique to republicanism with a small r, republicanism, is that we, the people, create the laws and we enforce them, and they're for us. So we agree on an ordered liberty. And the policemen, maintain that order within each of our communities. Paul Harvey's father was a policeman in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and was killed in the line of duty when Paul Harvey was 3 years old. Paul Harvey, if you don't know, was a famous commentator on radio for many decades. He died in his 90s, and he worked out of the Chicago studios. And he was famous for his delivery, but he had a number of essays, some on firemen and different things, the rest of the story, as you recall. And so he did do one in the 70s on policemen. I'd like to share that with you today. What are policemen made of? A policeman is a composite of what all men are, I guess. Mingling of a saint and sinner, dust and deity. Cold statistics wave the fan over stinkers, underscore instances of dishonesty and brutality because they are news. But what that really means is that they are exceptional, unusual, not commonplace. Buried beneath the froth is a fact. And the fact is that less than 0.5% of policemen misfit that uniform. That's a better average than you'd find among clergymen. What is a policeman? Of all men, he is at once the most needed and the most unwanted. He's a strangely nameless creature who is sir to his face and fuzz or worse behind his back. He must be such a diplomat that he can settle differences between individuals so that each will think he won. But if the policeman's neat, he's conceited. If he's careless, he's a bum. If he's pleasant, he's a flirt. If not, he's a grouch. He must make an instant decision, which would require months for a lawyer to make. But if he hurries, he's careless. If he's deliberate, he's lazy. He must be first to an accident and infallible with his diagnosis. He must be able to start breathing, stop bleeding, tie splints, and above all, be sure the victim goes home without a limp or expect to be sued. The police officer must know every gun, draw on the run, and hit where it doesn't hurt. He must be able to whip 2 men twice his size and half his age without damaging his uniform and without being brutal. If you hit him, he's a coward. If he hits you, he's a bully. The policeman must know everything and not tell. He must know where all of the sin is and not partake. The policeman, from a single strand of human hair, must be able to describe the crime, the weapon, and the criminal, and tell you where the criminal is hiding. But if he catches the criminal, he's lucky. If he doesn't, he's a dunce. If he gets promoted, he has political pull. If he doesn't, he's a dullard. He runs files and writes reports until his eyes ache to build a case against some felon who will get dealed out by a shameless Seamus or an honorable who isn't honorable. The policeman must chase bum leads to a dead end, stake out 10 nights to tag one witness who saw it happen but refuses to remember. The policeman must be a minister, a social worker, a diplomat, a tough guy, and a gentleman. And of course, he'll have to be a genius, for he will have to feed a family on a policeman's salary. Good day. All right, Paul Harvey. On July 4th, 1939, Lou Gehrig, famous Yankee first baseman, had to retire. Well, he gave a speech at Yankee Stadium to a packed house between two games of a doubleheader between the Washington Senators and the New York Yankees. A few weeks earlier, the newspapers had reported that Gehrig had contracted or diagnosed with ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, today known also as Lou Gehrig's disease. Lou Gehrig would die within 2 years of his speech on July 4th, 1939. But fans demanded a day of recognition for Lou Gehrig, and July 4th was picked in that year. Gehrig didn't know for sure if he was going to be able to. He was still weak from the disease. He did dress up, suit up in his uniform. Babe Ruth was retired but came to the stadium that day, and a number of other dignitaries. So between the two games of that doubleheader, Lou Gehrig was escorted up to the home plate to voice his gratitude. Instead of whining about this, that, and the other, instead he wanted to show how grateful he was for what he was able to do with his life. Fans, for the past 2 weeks, you've been reading about a bad break I got. Today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth. I've been in ballparks for 17 years and have never received anything but kindness and encouragement from you fans. When you look around, wouldn't you consider it a privilege to associate yourself with such fine-looking men as are standing in uniform in this ballpark today? Sure, I'm lucky. Who wouldn't consider it an honor to have known Congressman and Yankees owner Jacob Ruppert, also the builder of baseball's greatest empire, Yankees general manager Ed Barrow, to have spent 6 years with my first Yankee manager, who left us all too soon, that wonderful little fellow from Cincinnati, Miller Huggins, and then to have spent the next 9 years with that outstanding leader, that smart student of psychology, the best manager in baseball today, Joe McCarthy. Sure, I'm lucky. When the New York Giants, the team you would give your right arm to beat and vice versa, sends you a gift, well, that's something. When everybody, down to the groundskeepers, the concessionaires, those boys in white coats, remember you with trophies, that's something. When you have a wonderful mother-in-law who takes sides with you and squabbles with her own daughter, that's something. When you have a father and a mother who work all their lives so that you can have an education and build your body, it's a blessing. And when you have a wife who has been a tower of strength and shown more courage than you dreamed existed, well, that's the finest I know. So I close in saying that I might have been given a bad break, but I've got an awful lot to live for. Thank you.
Start spreading the news. I'm leaving today. I want to be a part of it. New York, New York. These vagabond shoes are longing to stray right through.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. My next show will be the first Sunday in August. Not sure what the date is, but there'll be one show per month from here on out, so it's the first Sunday of the month. And maybe next month we will... Okay, it's August the 1st is the first Sunday next month. Hopefully you will tune in then, and we'll see you tomorrow at the Lake County Coalition picnic And on July 22nd, the American Nationalities Movement dinner, honoring former ambassador to Ireland, Edward Crawford, and Justice Kennedy, the Ohio Supreme Court. Have a wonderful 4th of July for the rest of it, and enjoy your day off tomorrow for those of you who are off. Thank you again, and good night.
In a city that never sleeps,